Hi, it's Andrew Palmer. It looks like it's Jonathan Denwood, but it's not. He's out at some conference or other. You know what these people are like. They go out and entertain themselves. And I'd like to introduce you to Stephen Sawdust, Stephen Sowder, first of all, who's a regular co-presenter with Jonathan. And I'm Andrew Palmer. As the name says, it's not Jonathan Denwood, it's Andrew Palmer. And also, we have with us today our main sponsor, which is fantastic. So Castos Castos rather, because I've got to do a Jonathan there and get the name wrong occasionally. So it's Castos Podcasting, and it's Craig Hewitt, who's the main person, the starter, the founder, the man that did it, and has allowed us to be sponsored by him for quite a few months now. So we're all very grateful for that. So Craig, introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit, 30 seconds of who you are, why you are, and where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me. We're looking forward to kind of diving into everything. But yeah, my name's Craig Hewitt. I'm the founder of Castos. We're a podcast hosting and analytics platform. We're a team of 15 people all over the world, 4 different continents. And we've been in business about 4.5 years, and have several thousand customers. And that's kind of who we are at this point.
That's basically who you are. So you make it easier basically for people like us to go out and podcast and do stuff and kind of and monetize it or do it for entertainment and things like that. Now, I had one question for you. So you bought simply podcasting. There was a plugin you bought that basically started this off 4 years ago or 4.5 years ago. But what did you? I'm interested in what you did before that, and then we can maybe get into why you bought that and what your thought process was to buying a podcasting plugin.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so definitely the way we got started with this was purchasing the Seriously Simple podcasting plugin. Before that, I was also in the podcasting space, running a productized service that does, and we still have it kind of within the Castos umbrella now, kind of done for you podcast editing and production. So folks, record a piece of content like this, ship it off to us. We mix it with intro and outro. We have a team of audio engineers that cleans up all the ums and ahs and levels and makes everybody sound really great. Write show notes, create some marketing assets, publish it to your website. So you record, send it to us, and next Thursday it's live in Apple Podcasts and Spotify and everything. So ran that company it was called Podcast Motor. Ran that company for, all told, probably like 4 years, but
Wow.
a year and a half as a side deal while I had a day job. Was able to quit my day job and go full time on that. And then about 8 months after quitting my job and everything, the opportunity to acquire Serious and Simple Podcasting came along, and that's been my kind of big thing ever since, is building Castos.
Cool. Right. One important aspect you missed out. What was your day job that you were skiving off and, creating this little empire that you've made?
Yeah. So it was totally unrelated. I was in sales in the medical field. So, wow. in the US, like medical technology and medical equipment sales and everything is just an enormous industry, all very privatized. And so we sold capital equipment and disposable equipment to hospitals and doctors.
Oh, cool. Okay. Well, you're helping kind of, aren't you? Because we all need to keep our health going. Right. Stephen, you got anything to ask Craig? Well, because I've got about 8 questions I'm going to batter him with. So you carry on.
Yeah, I have at least 16, but so you bought a plugin, which kind of really launched you into the space. It sounds like a lot of people that kind of like go that way seem like they were like programmers, or like they were moonlighting, like they had like their development job and then they like get in the plugin space. What was it like hopping from a like non-development job? All of a sudden you get this WordPress plugin. Did you know PHP? Did you know how to program? Did you have people on your team that could do that? Was it scary? Was it intimidating?
Terrifying. Like, yeah. yeah, just absolutely terrifying. No, to this day, so I know a little bit of code, but don't write any code and never have. And that's really hard. I think non-technical founders have just an uphill battle, as opposed to folks who can write code. I guess in a way, right? In a way they do, because they can't write code and not even like can't write code, but can't understand what it means to develop software. And like worked for a long time with Jonathan Bossinger, who was our first developer and was with us for years and years, and has since moved on to a role at Delicious Brains, outside of development, coincidentally. But a lot of just how he and I communicated and how we form a development process as a company, and how I get what's out of my head into something that they can work with, is just a huge learning curve for someone who's not a developer. At the same time, like, I have pretty decent skills in sales and marketing, and so like I didn't have to learn that, which I think that is a maybe bigger hurdle for technical founders to come in and say, like, hey, I can write all this code, I just want to make the product better and better all the time. And I think the reality is, like, after a certain point, a better product is not going to change the growth trajectory of a company. You know, it's sales and marketing that's going to really make a company, because otherwise it's just a product. And so, yeah, I mean, getting back to your question, it was really challenging to learn how to work with the developer to create a product. It was my first real product, and jumping into SaaS directly was a huge mistake, I think, but you know, it worked out. It worked out in the end because we were able to self-fund the product in Jonathan's time from the profits of a productized service business. So I think that the model is really good for, you know, maybe a lot of folks listening that like have a small agency or are developers, are freelancers, and have, you know, either flexible time and or money that they can invest in a product, while not just like cutting yourself off at the knees, going headfirst into this thing, but just like, yeah, burn the candle at both ends for a little bit. Take extra profits you're getting from your business or from freelancing and put it into a product that can then sustain you independently later on. And kind of bridging the gap that way is a nice, easier transition than just going head first.
Yeah,
that's my experience. I'm going to interrupt you there, Steven, because I know Jonathan Bossinger really well. He was one of my first developers on Elegant Marketplace. I used to own Elegant Marketplace, and I've been lucky enough to meet him a couple of times. Met him at Berlin, but we've had many hours of Zoom calls and phone calls and WhatsApp calls and everything, certainly during the early days. And I was really pleased to see him developing on that, and I've been pleased to see his progress actually as a developer, going on to, you know, from Codable to, or from Elegant Marketplace to Codable to now doing what Delicious Brains. I don't know what he does with Delicious Brains. I haven't spoken to him for about 7 months, to be honest. But yeah, I think he really helped. And that's the key, isn't it? Finding a developer that you can actually get on with. And he's quite chill as well. So he kind of doesn't get too stressed out and just said, well, I'm doing it as fast as I can, you know. So that's key to finding a great developer to work with.
Yeah.
And that's important. In fact, you know, another thing that you did, because I develop other stuff as well, and I've got an agency. Stephen does it himself as well, and we've both had successes and I wouldn't call them failures, but things that didn't quite work out. Through finance more than anything else, you know, because I don't want to go, like you probably didn't want to go into the VC world or into investment, or, you know, how are you? One of the questions that I had for you, which trips on or really segues great into what you said, is how have you financed your growth? Is it specifically through sales and marketing and getting customers on? What's your churn rate like? What's your acquisition rate like? What's your acquisition cost like? Because I think anybody that's interested in developing a product for WordPress or SaaS product needs to know these kind of little tips and tricks from a, let's say, successful founder like you know, because let's face it, you've got thousands of customers, paying customers. How are you doing it?
Yeah. So I think just to hit on something you said, like, finding a developer that you really get on good with is so key. And like, when we hire developers now, a very significant part of it is just communication. You know, can I have a cup of coffee with them and communicate about a thing? Can they come to me and honestly and openly say, like, hey, this is weird and I don't understand this, and I think we're over engineering this thing, and hey, we're under engineering this thing, this is a huge operational gap for us over here. Like, I think just being able to be really open about that is important for me as a non-technical founder, for sure, and I think for it sounds like for you all as technical folks, working with developers, really important. So yeah, I mean, I think finding Jonathan was a really lucky thing for us. And would be hugely important if I ever do this again, to find probably like a co-founder that's a technical person that I can just 100% rely on, everything they say, and we're really aligned on kind of where we're going. But to answer your question about like kind of the finance or the acquisition side of the business, we were self-funded for a long time, bootstrapped for a long time, right? So like the productized service allowed us to buy the plugin and pay for Jonathan's time for, however many months until we got the first version. We were very lucky to have quick traction to where we had paying customers on the first day that we rolled the first version of the product out. And we're to like $10,000 in MRR, like within the first year, which is pretty decent for like a self-funded company.
Absolutely. Yeah. Really cool.
Not long after we did take financing. We've taken financing twice now. Not from like true venture capital, but at first from a startup accelerator program called Tiny Seed. So folks who listen to this podcast might know of Rob Walling and all that he's done. And we were part of the first batch of Tiny Seed, where we took about 120,000 of financing there to be part of the accelerator program. And then earlier this year, June, I guess, a couple months ago, raised a more kind of proper seed round, or pre-seed round, I guess technically you call it, of about $750,000 from kind of individuals and companies that folks in this podcast would know, including Automatic and the Yoast team invested in us. So, but I think that even with raising the amount of money we've raised, we still work a lot like a bootstrapped company, where like if you go raise $200 million, like you don't care about anything related to profitability, because the goal is just what do we need to do from now until we raise our next round. Whereas, we're just kind of like this series of dips and returns to the mean, like we are burning money right now. And that's the whole point of raising money, is we want to invest in the company and the growth and the people now, instead of just amortizing that over, the next year when we could be able to afford it. So we raised money, are spending more money than we make right now, and know that in the next year, we need to get back to this point where we're breaking even again, at least. And so it's just a totally different mindset, as opposed to like true venture capital, where like the goal is just do what you have to feel good about raising a seed and then a Series A and a Series B.
Where's the money going?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So for the first time ever, 4.5 years in, we first calculated our LTV to CAC ratio last month. So LTV, lifetime value, CAC, customer acquisition cost.
Yeah.
And so CAC is basically all the money you spend on sales and marketing, paid acquisition, ads, people, content, all that kind of stuff. And it was really interesting. Like it was really good. And this is a funny thing, because like good is kind of bad also. Like there's this ratio, like the sweet spot of LTV, lifetime value, to customer acquisition cost should be around 3 times, right? So your lifetime value should be about 3 times what it takes you to acquire a customer. Ours was higher than that, which means we're acquiring customers efficiently, but at the same time, not spending enough on marketing. So it's kind of like this.
And you get to that because you say, well, we're acquiring customers efficiently, and it's not costing as much as we thought it would be, because our LTV is like, whatever.
Yep.
Is greater than, and that suddenly makes you realize that you've got to spend your money either more effectively, or you've got to spend more of it at a particular time. What's your churn rate like?
Yeah, we're fortunate. It's really good. It hovers around 2%.
That is really crazy good. When you're thinking about, when you're talking about ISPs, hosting, in our genre, if you're talking about cable companies, you're talking 25% churn, right? So, and their customer cost acquisition is like 2 years worth of ARR, right? So,
that's you'll make work.
Yeah. Well, it is tough to make it work, but they've got massive institutional investors. I know that I used to work for MTL, now Virgin Media. Now their customer acquisition cost was like $2,000, and their monthly was $21.99. So
Yeah,
it takes a while to get that back. But when you're dealing with institutional investors that have got gazillions of money to put in, they really don't care, because at the end of the day, they're investing in these companies to do their buyout, their sellout or whatever, which they did. I think NCL got sold about 18 times during the time that I was working with them, 6 years. But Stephen, I interrupted you there. Really great answers to those questions, totally open as well. Amazing. Keep it up.
I appreciate that. Is the idea behind spending more money in marketing that you can get more efficiencies out of that like if you invest in marketing $1, like by increasing that dollar spend, you can increase the efficiency of that dollar in trying to decrease that acquisition cost? Or is that kind of a weird way of thinking about it?
I don't know. Like, I guess I've not thought of it in that way. What you're saying doesn't seem wrong. Like I've not thought of it in that way. The ways that we want to invest more in marketing, with both kind of raising funding and kind of seeing our LTV to CAC ratio being, good to where we should feel good about spending more money on marketing, is really like a market share strategy, like podcasting. And this is where I think like your strategy and our strategy for like raising money had a lot to do with the industry that we're in, right? Podcasting is really dynamic, a lot going on, a lot of people being bought and sold, companies being bought and sold. And because of that, we said like, hey, we should take money, because the chance of something really great happening if we raise some money and are able to invest in the company and the growth of the platform and the team now versus, just spreading that out over a few years, probably gets us ahead of where we would be otherwise. And so like,
how creative do you get with that spend then? Like, so now you have money to play around with marketing a little bit more. Do you say, oh, these are some tried and true methods, like let's just try to refine that? Or you're like, hey, let's go try some off the wall crazy new ideas and do a mini TV series, or I don't know what. Yeah,
no, you're spot on that. Like, and again, like we didn't raise enough money to where we can do a bunch of super crazy things, like get a billboard on the 5 interstate in LA or something like that. But like, but we are, like we're creating an original podcast series right now. That has nothing to do with podcasting, has nothing to do with SaaS or WordPress or marketing. And the goal really is like, hey, we have the time and the resources and the talent on the team to create this really incredible piece of work. But it also is going to serve like a purpose, right? It's going to be like kind of like our calling card or our digital resume. Like folks come to say, we want to create like this really amazing narrative style podcast. We're going to say, cool. Like, if you want to see what working with us is like, here's what we do, And so we're just able to do a little bit more of that than, a smaller company or a company that's entirely bootstrapped, because that money has to really go to work well when you're bootstrapped. And if you're not super profitable, it's tough to think about taking those kind of bets. At the same time, like I'm pretty pragmatic when it comes to sales and marketing. Like it's not complicated. It's just hard, right? Like create a bunch of really great content, build that organic engine, take care of those leads and prove your value proposition to them in sales. And like how you do that is the really hard part, but it's not super complicated. Like it's just a matter of doing all that really, really well. And like what we've found is that like, it's just the people are so important. It's the people on the team realizing like, hey, we can create a a really bad piece of content.
WP-Tonic, you can swear out as much as you like. Get on it.
That's pretty tame. You're way behind the usual guests.
Hey, pussy.
You can create like average content, right? And it's going to do an average job. And like just what we're finding across the board, like whether it's sales, marketing, product development, is that like I'm coming to realize like that really amazing people are really, really, really like the thing that make the difference. We talked about Jonathan Bossinger before, and like Jonathan, if you're listening, it was a real bummer for him to leave, because he's an amazing developer and a great person. And he's
an amazing person. Yeah, I totally agree. He's an amazing person. I absolutely adore him. He's just a wonderful guy and really just honest. But on on that with the people, Matt Madeiros still with you, right? As of yesterday and today and stuff, and carrying on, even though he kind of questioned one of your investors quite a little while ago. That bit him in the arse a couple of times, but that was how did you feel about that kind of situation with Automatic giving you some cash and having criticism from one of your podcasters that works with you but works independently as the Matt Madeiros podcast? And Matt's great. I've even bought a hat, because by buying the hat, you contribute to the Big Orange Heart, which is it's like close to my heart, and it's UK based as well. So how do you handle, and Yoast being bought as well? Did Yoast invest, or was it the DeVolks that invested? Which was it? How does that affect you when you then suddenly find out that Yoast is now part of a new order? It kind of must go through your mind and going, oh shit, what happened there? This kind of stuff going on.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the real values that we have as an organization is we have a bunch of different people from really different backgrounds with different priorities and perspectives and things that they think are important. And when you really are able to embrace that and try to amplify it as much as possible is when really cool stuff happens, is what we've seen. We have people just in sales and marketing from the auto industry and web hosting and, all these really different agencies and all these really different backgrounds, to where when we put all of that together into what we're doing now, it's really cool. And we have a bunch of different perspectives. We're able to cherry pick the best of this one and the best of this one and the best of this one. And so I think that when it comes to specifically what you're asking, Matt and his opinions and his stance on certain things, we really embrace it, because that's a big part of what makes us us. And I think, what you're talking about specifically, I know Matt has a ton of respect for Automatic as a company, and what they've done for the ecosystem and stuff. And for him to be, honest and challenging in what he's doing is really healthy. And I think that everyone would say that. So
isn't that the, we have the WP-Tonic podcast, and sometimes Jonathan is quite challenging, let's face it. And isn't that the host's duty almost, to be challenging without trying to be too controversial, but to challenge? And how do you see that growth of, we've got a couple of challenging podcasters out there. One was bought by Shopify. I won't mention his name particularly, but everybody knows who. He's a particularly challenging host on there. How do you feel about having a tool that can broadcast people's opinions that you don't or may not particularly regard as appropriate?
Yeah, it's really challenging, right? Because I think this is where my personal beliefs and how the company operates need to divulge.
Yeah,
whatever.
Or separate. Divorce. Or separate,
divorce.
Whatever. Yeah.
Because my beliefs are not what the company should do necessarily. And I think that one of the responsibilities that a platform like ours has, or WordPress.com, has, is the responsible ability to let pretty much anybody say anything they want, within some confines and with some guardrails, but to say hey, if it's not hurtful, it's not inciting a riot at the Capitol, it's not actually hurting people or spreading misinformation, the ability for someone on the far right or the far left of the political spectrum to come in and say whatever they want, as long as they're not hurting anybody, is the right that we create as a platform, and where it goes off the edges from there is the super, super challenging part, because a lot of times it's subjective, it's what is hurtful sometimes is really clear, and a lot more of the time is not. And so then it's just a judgment decision that the company has to make, to say hey, I understand that you may think this is okay, but it's not.
And it's always our right as individuals to be offended. I mean, it's my right to be offended, but I'm pretty much not offended. I've been ginger most of my life, and it's kind of goes. I'm going grey now. In fact, the fact that I'm ginger was criticised, or not ginger any longer, was criticised last night when I was out partying. They went, "Oh, you've gone grey. You're not ginger anymore." That's right. Thanks for mentioning ginger. But it's I know that Stephen has set up a few companies and stuff, and I think the advice that you're giving and the openness here is like outrageous. It's great about financials and who's investing and all that kind of stuff. But the main crux of it, are you building this business to sell?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think that anyone who takes outside investment and says they're not gonna sell the business at some point is lying and or doing a bad job to their shareholders. So yeah, I mean, when we took money, the idea was at some point our shareholders need to get a return, and that the easiest way that could happen is to sell or to IPO, and that IPO is I don't know. That's a really interesting one. It doesn't have to be on the NASDAQ anymore. There are a lot of new places coming out where smaller companies can go public and create a liquidation event for their investors. And for themselves and for themselves. Yeah. And I don't know what that'll look like for us, but yeah, I think at some point, our investors need to get paid for sure.
Cool. Stephen, I've totally over-hosted this. Carry on.
No, great questions. That's super interesting answers too. As far as Castos and WordPress integration, it's been really deeply tied to WordPress. As you grow, what happens with that? Is there need to say, oh, we're also deeply integrated with these other environments? Is WordPress always going to be the darling that you focus on? Kind of what direction and where do you take things as Castos gets bigger?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the natural kind of evolution is a little bit out of WordPress, but it will definitely always be our core in terms of integrations and kind of place we come from. You were asking before about starting a software project. I think add complexity to that is an open source project, and supporting an open source project is just infinitely more complicated than, I have a Ruby on Rails app and it's all my world and everything that happens in there I have complete control over. But an open source project is just complicated, but it is really, really powerful, and the ecosystem of WordPress is just amazing. And I can't imagine us ever wanting to separate ourselves from it, just because I think it's great. It's a great community. It's a great product. And for us as a customer acquisition channel, it's great because a bunch of people use our plugin and it's entirely free, and it will always be entirely free. And then some of them decide to use our hosting platform too. And I think what we're doing in general, and it applies both to WordPress and not to WordPress, is just giving more inputs and outputs to our platform. And so we have a brand new, absolutely beautiful marketing site coming out in a couple of weeks. And one of the things on the homepage is that Castos is the center of your audio universe. And that's really where we're going, is if you think about a product like WordPress, right? Where I use the analogy of Typeform a lot, right? There's a lot of things that come into Typeform and Typeform does it things. And then there's a lot of things that come out of Typeform into a Google Sheet or a payment tool or something like that.
Yeah.
And so we see Castos as a similar kind of thing in the future, where WordPress may be a lot of the inputs to what we're doing with Castos, but then there are going to be outputs from Castos to social media, and email, and Shopify, and things like that. That will be coming in the future. So yeah, I mean, I think we view how WordPress and our involvement in WordPress evolves kind of similarly to other tools that we're integrating with, but it's always kind of the first place that we go for those pieces of expansion, I guess.
Cool. Yeah. Right. So it's now time for us just to take a little break and announce the fact, actually, this is episode number 630. So we're just going to take a little break so that we've got time to have some messages. Right, welcome back to episode 630 with Craig Hewitt and Stephen Souder and Andrew Palmer standing in for Jonathan Hewitt. It's been interesting. There's been some quite drive-by shooting questions by me and Stephen, and Craig has answered them all with aplomb and total integrity and honesty. Now, I've got one more question. Well, I've probably got a few hundred questions. You've got 30,000 users of the Seriously Simple podcasting plugin downloaded from WP.org. How the hell do you handle support? What's going on?
So we're a team of 3 full-time folks on support. Is part of the answer. The other part is all of our developers are actively involved in support like almost every day. And I think it it frankly is a big challenge for a lot of companies, like how you handle, we call it the product process, right? How do you handle the idea of like, we want to build this thing and then it goes and gets spec'd and then implemented and then rolled out and feedback and testing, and like, how does this thing just keep going? I know how we do things, and it's not done or perfect by any stretch. But I think the answer is we spend a lot of resources on it. And it is that blessing and curse of open source in a project like WordPress, where you're integrating with an environment where there's a million variables you don't have any control over. And a lot of times we're able to harden the product to where it's not susceptible to all these weird interactions and things. And sometimes we're not. And that's where, people come to us and say, like, I have this 17-year-old theme and I'm running WordPress that's 12 years old and I want to install the latest version of your plugin and it's breaking. You're like, I think one of the hardest things for us is at some point we just have to say, I am really sorry that like our plugin broke your site, but it's not our fault, and that is a super challenging thing for us to say.
It's very difficult, and we deal with support quite a lot, Stephen and I, and it's difficult also. What I try and instill in my support guys, and I've only really literally just learned this in the last month or so, is don't assume that your customer is wrong, right? If something's happening on there with a plugin on their website and you've not seen it in testing or in QC or anything like that, don't assume that they're wrong, because there can be something, especially if you build something. I don't know how your plugin was built, but if you built something, using Bootstrap as your starting base, you've got to comment out all of the Bootstrap stuff, because that interferes with WordPress dashboards and the way other things display as well. So you've got those issues that you may not see because you just may not see that. So it's and the phrase is, if you can't be anything else, be kind. True in support.
Yep.
In the first instance, if you're getting abused, we don't take any kind of abuse from our customers. We just can't. We got 100,000 customers that potentially ask us for support, and if 1 out of 10 is abusing us, that one just goes by the wayside. How do you deal with the mental health, for instance, aspects of dealing with customers that are particularly difficult? Because it's a big issue out there. We know it's on the Twitter sphere all the time. WordPress developers and support guys suffering from proper mental health issues because of customers, basically.
Yeah. It's also really hard. I definitely don't have the best answer for this. I think just generally, when it comes to mental health, like a lot of us are going through this shit right now. Sure. COVID is a year and a half on and it's not getting any better a lot of places. And I think just, we have to all assume that like everybody is stressed right now. There's all this weird stuff going on in our minds. I think for us being able to talk internally as a team is really important, because I can go talk to my wife or my kids or my friends or whatever, but they don't understand a lot of what we go through. And so being able to talk really openly and really easily as a team is really important. And I'll tell you, when we've had situations where folks don't work out, it's because they've not been able to communicate, with us internally. And they suffer in silence, and I think that's the worst is yeah, there's bad shit that happens at work. And like, you got to be able to just say like, I'm closing this ticket. I don't care. They can respond to later, if they're being a jerk or whatever, like I can't deal with this. Or just say like, I can come back to it tomorrow. Right. I'm going to go help,
Yeah.
the other people who are being really kind and have really valid concerns. I personally am probably quicker than I should be to just say we can't do this.
You're the boss. Is that because of the boss mentality? Maybe is that I'm the founder, so I've got the innate authority to actually tell someone to go fishing. So
yeah,
is that
I think that's part of it. Yeah, I think that's part of it is like your kind of frontline support rep doesn't want to make that call, right? Because they think they could make the wrong call, and then that could be really, a big deal for the company and the reputation and whatever happens on Twitter and everything. But for me, like, it's my decision. I can be comfortable with it. I think the other thing that like we talk a lot about with like the kind of leadership folks in our team is like the value of your time, and like the value of your time as a founder is really high. And like, you should always be asking yourself this, like, is the thing I'm doing worth more than $500 an hour or whatever you think your kind of equivalent rate is? And if the answer is no, then someone else should be doing it. And you should be reserving your time for this super high leverage, high value stuff. And like that idea, I think applies to everyone in the company, and like, if our support folks are answering a question of a person who doesn't have like a valid issue and is being mean and all this kind of stuff, they have a bunch of other customers who are really valuable and have real needs, and they should be taking care of them instead. And so like, we try to kind of share this idea of like, the value of your time needs to be considered, just amongst, customers and tickets and dev and bugs and stuff like that. It's like, all of the things you're working on are not equal. And us like making sure we're always thinking about how we prioritize our time for our happiness and for our productivity and the contribution to the company and the customers is something that everybody needs to be thinking about. And it's not a natural thing, like, even for me as a founder, like, I have a guilty pleasure of like, I love researching new, marketing tools. And like, that is a really bad use of my time, like, but I love it. And so like, I give myself the out sometimes to say like, man, should we move from drip to active campaign? I don't know. Let's go start an active campaign trial and futz around with this for a while.
That's hilarious. That's like my weakness is testing out all sorts of like new software. I just love it. It's like my favorite thing to do. But
yeah,
it's totally
my new favorite thing is Zip Message. I mean, Brian Cassell is amazing. A phenomenal developer. I'm using it for support. I'm sending it to customers. I just did a little thing for Bob at Woo. He sent me a Zip message. I recorded my little message for his podcast, and Zip message. And are you thinking about? Did you see Zip message and come out and Brian doing his asynchronous podcast? Have you seen those things that are going on? Did you think about and go, damn that man, that's a really great idea. How the hell can we get into that space?
I mean, Brian is a really good friend, like known him for a long time. And so like, well, first of all, super happy that he's finding success with what he's doing. Yeah, I mean, I think that like something that we see and Matt Medeiros and I talk about it a lot is like a bunch of people are coming into our space from different angles, Kajabi coming into podcasting for course creators and stuff like that. And like, it's cool, right? It's a big world. We all have enough space to be successful and to kind of find our place here. I do very much think that there's something to the concept that you're talking about. And like, we have a different way we think about it, which is like a big problem with podcasting is like, we're having this conversation right now and there's only 3 of us, right? And there's a whole bunch of people listening and they have no opportunity to provide direct feedback. And so something we're thinking a lot about is like, especially when it comes to private podcasting, how can you get audience involvement in the podcast itself? Whether it's a comment or a like or a audio message back that gets introduced back into the show. Like we have ideas on a lot of those things for our mobile app.
That's really cool because this is, I mean, we're using to talk to you and to see you, we're using a webinar app, and we'll throw it in to the podcasting thing we use. I think it could be called Castos, that sort of thing. But it's after it's edited and everything. But we're using Zoom, and you're limited with Zoom or any kind of webinar to 100 people or 500 people, and it starts to get really expensive, right? So that's the issue. Is what I think you're doing is you're making podcasting accessible, because it's a low cost option. It's free. You can use Seriously Simple Podcasting for free. But on that, then, once you start introducing new products and you've still got your core product of Castos and editing and, how to present a podcast and stuff, how do you feel what kind of hierarchy is education towards your content marketing goals, towards getting and acquiring new customers? What part of how important is education to that?
Yeah, I mean, that's Matt's job, really. Like his director is, or his title is Director of Podcaster Success. And like his first job and priority is, creating content for podcasters to be successful. And a lot of times that looks like marketing. But it is really educational. And it is really helpful. Matt holds a call every week that's open to everybody where he just gets on and talks about podcasting. And he's a super knowledgeable guy. So yeah, I mean, I think that even podcasting now in 2021 is so new to so many people. Like there's 600 episodes of this podcast. You all know what you're doing, but like there's a whole bunch of people we talk to that have no idea about anything relating to podcasting. And so I mean, I think we say we can never get to folks early enough in their process, when they start thinking about a podcast, because we want to be the ones that say like, hey, this is the mic you should use, and this is how you should think about the story arc of your podcast and everything. Because I mean, and now, in 2021 again, like there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of podcasts there and a lot of them suck. Right. And so like what is becoming the thing now is not just a podcast, but like a really good podcast. And that is infinitely harder than starting a podcast was 5 years ago, even, is like how to create it. Sorry.
What's that apart? Like a really good podcast, like in your mind, if somebody's like, okay, I got to hit this really good podcast, like what are those things? Is it so saturated that it has to be like, you have to have the best mic and you have to have the best audio editing equipment and you have to have the best storyline and the most interesting guests or a murder that happens that you can, research and analyze? Like, is it all of those things?
Yeah, I think not the last one, but yeah, the rest of them. Like, I think if you want to have a really, really awesome podcast, like you have to have the gear, you have to be able to edit it. You have to, you have to put interesting audio elements in there, like music and transitions and bits like that. Like they're called narrative podcasts. If you listen to like Jack Rhysider, Darknet Diaries, like that's what a good podcast is. Jay Acunzo from 3 Clips. Like those are really good podcasts, and they take a ton of time in the actual like creation and editing and production. But then like way before then, like who's a guest, and have you done your research? Do you know what the hell they're all about, and other podcasts they've been on, and questions that they've been asked 800 times? Like, don't ask that question. Ask another question, or get a guest on that.
Don't ask what inspired you. That's the worst question ever, right?
Yeah. I mean, you want to, like we always say, like you want to get on if it's an interview show, you want to get a guest on that your audience has never heard of before, right? Because that's fresh perspective. Or if you're going to have Rob Walling on, who like he's been on a lot of podcasts, like ask Rob about his childhood, or ask Rob about whatever, not like, hey, Rob, how do you think about content marketing for SaaS? Like that's just an answer he's given 800 times and given talks on and YouTube and all this kind of stuff. So like, I think that like a lot of us, and I'll put myself in this boat, kind of get lazy, and say like, all right, I'm going to do a podcast and it's Tuesday and it's got to go out and all this kind of stuff. And like, that's cool. And like, there's nothing wrong with that. But like, if you want to really stand out, like you got to do your homework and you got to put the time in. And it's like art, like I have an engineering background, like not development, but like real engineering. And like, so
come on now.
the like artistic endeavor is not like native to me, but I definitely appreciate it. Like when I see people who are able to create these really amazing podcasts, I just say like, wow, that is fucking incredible. Like, and those are the ones that are being successful now. Like I think the two people on a mic, and I have two people on a mic podcasts are just like, they're great if you want your friends to be able to stay in touch with what you're doing. But like, if you want to build a real thing that can get ad revenue, you can sell memberships to or something, like it's got to be a lot better than that.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the questions and everything, I'm looking at your pictures in the background. I mean, is one a farm and one an industrial complex?
So the pictures... my wife painted these. She's amazing.
Oh, wow.
This is the little village we live in. From like a long time ago. And this is Brittany, like the west coast of France.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's amazing. But the thing is that one thing I find about podcasts and listening to a lot of podcasts, and to do my research, I listened to about 3 podcasts that you were on. Some are old, and I mentioned, not at the top of the show, but at the top of meeting you, is that your hair has grown. It's COVID times, and all our hair. I've managed to have a haircut, but and Steve's always smooth as silk, baby. But the point is that we've all got stuff going on. So how have you spoke of COVID, and it's difficult and it is tough. And I built I get people take the piss out of me because I've got a shed, but it's actually my log cabin, and it's in the bottom of my garden, and it's my man cave and all that kind of stuff. And this is how I've had, I make music in here. I scream and shout in here. I shout at the dog, and I kind of build products and try and be a founder just like you as well. But I also have a lot of fun. I go on Zoom meeting with my pals, and we play chess online and all that kind of stuff. And doesn't sound like fun, but it is actually fun because I don't, make sure that camera's watching every moment that you're moving and stuff. But and playing guitar, I'm learning guitar. I'm learning more chords on guitar. So I get online with a guy one-on-one teaching guitar, and we started off in lockdown. And we're still doing it by Zoom because he's found it so successful for him, because he can get to more people. He doesn't have to travel.
Yeah.
And it works. And talking about kit, I actually bought him the kit because I said, this is how I helped him set it up and stuff. But one thing that gets me down with podcasts is the long intro, is the advertising, is the same conversation about everything. And we may be guilty of this today, but I hope I've asked you a couple of drive-by shootings. And trying to get into the personalities of we can see that you're a fun person and you get on with people and you're a team builder and all that kind of stuff. But what do you do? Do you go mountain biking? Do you run? What do? You got kids? You got a wife, obviously, who's very slightly more talented than you by the look of it. So what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, I think like a lot of founders, I don't do as good a job as I should to take care of myself. And like, I think if you ask any founder that says they're doing a great job of taking care of themselves, they're probably lying. But yeah, I mean, I have a wife, and I have 2 amazing kids, an amazing wife and 2 amazing kids. And a lot of my free time is with them. I really like working. And I don't find it super stressful most of the time. It's a huge challenge, and I'm a real like achievement oriented person. Like it's the thing that gives me a lot of satisfaction, is like achieving a goal or achieving a thing or launching a product. And so I really like work a lot. And your question about like, are we going to sell the company? Like, this won't be what I do forever. And like, that's super scary, like the thought that like, I've spent all this time and all this energy and all these nights doing this thing, and then at some point I won't have that anymore. And like, I'm not worried about it now, but like, it is a thing that before I'm done with this, I'll very much know what I'm going to do next, because I can't just do nothing. Because work is a big part of my life, and that's not wrong. I don't think, like I'll never retire, I don't think, because I like working and I like accomplishing things, and building things that are important to people. To answer your question specifically, I do a decent job of exercising, like a handful of times a week. I do a bit of running. We live kind of out in the country, and so I run on the trails. out here. Yeah, and I live in France, and in the summer it's really amazing around here, and there's just a ton of outdoor stuff to do.
So you're local. I play golf in France. So
okay.
We may have to hook up, because I'm UK. I'm London, so I'm like 6 hours away from you or 5 hours away from you if I take the train or whatever. And Brittany's lovely as well. But the thing is, you won't retire. I sold my company, and there was enough there to sort of say, well, do you know what? I can definitely semi-retire. And then, of course, someone comes along with a plug-in idea, and we go off and develop it, and and then we launch, and it's just too exciting. And then I hurt my leg last week, so I haven't played golf for 2 weeks since I hurt my leg on the golf course. But you basically, I've got golf, so I play Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Although I'm at my desk at 6 a.m. in the morning talking to my devs, and then I go off and play golf at 11 or 12 o'clock. So you kind of, your life just adjusts to the way that you want it to be. And it is, and because we're remote, you live in France, you're developing Matt's in the US. I don't know what side he is, PST or EST. Stephen, where are you? Are you EST or PST or Mountain Time?
EST, yeah, Indiana.
In Indiana. US. So, it's that you've got time differences to cope with as well, Craig, running this thing with Jonathan. It wasn't so bad because he was like an hour or maybe even 2 hours depending on the time of year, and that's one of the things I want to get into 7 minutes before we're going to end is, how do you cope, and how does your team cope with remote working? Do you have like a facility that you all go into, or do you just use Zoom or Google Meet or something else? What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, so we've always been a remote team, and my thoughts and feelings towards remote is changing quite a bit. Like we will always be a remote team, I think, but maybe my next company won't be. Like I see a lot of remote that's really valuable, and I see the idea of being in person really, really valuable. Like I don't want to say it, but like, how many mega successful companies are remote by nature? Automatic, right? Buffer. Like there's a couple, right? But there's not nearly as many as ultra successful in-person companies. And I think it's because remote is a lot harder than a lot of us give credit to. So yeah, I mean, to answer your question, we're a remote team. How do I deal with it? So I live in France. A lot of our customer facing folks are in the US, and about half our developers are over here, on kind of European time zones. And so I typically work a bit in the morning with the product team over here and do things that I just need to do, like a project or a marketing initiative or something like that. I typically take a pretty decent chunk of time during the day off, and then there's this time from like 2 here, which is 8 o'clock Eastern time, until like this time, it's almost 7 o'clock, that I work, just because it's that time where everybody is online, Right. And it's the most important time of the day for us by far. It's the time when almost everything gets done, and then the mornings here, and then the afternoons for the folks on the East Coast, especially the folks on the West Coast, after, I and the developers here are gone, is time for them to be kind of heads down and doing whatever. I think if I had it to do entirely over again, I would probably just say like, okay, we can be a remote team, but we're going to be in these, plus or minus 2 time zones from me. Because, and that's kind of how we started, right? Jonathan was, South Africa, half the year is an hour ahead of us, and half the year they're the same. They don't do daylight savings. And so it was super easy because we were online all the time at the same time. But I was misaligned with a lot of our customers in the US. And so like, I think if I had to do it over again, maybe I would say we'll be a remote company, but we only want to hire folks, in Europe and Africa, if I'm living over here, or if I'm in the States, in the Americas, and Canada, because like we can't hire, someone in Thailand and someone in Portland and someone in South Africa, and in Ukraine, and think that we'll all easily get everything done that we need to. And
I get it. I mean, my development team is in India, and has been. It's my company, but it's an Indian development team, and it's based in Calcutta. I've got a couple of developers in the UK. I've got a couple in Ukraine as well. But so it's, and Stephen will speak of this as well, where it's difficult to have that kind of synergy when you're dealing with time zone issues. But and on that note, we know that I'm a UK guy, and I sell plugins, and 80% are to the US. Is that marketing, or is that the fact that take away the size? If you do per capita, I suppose it's about 60-40. But are there just not people in the Europes and the UKs of this world that are buying our stuff? Or what's your split with Europe and the US customer wise? Do you know that? Do you know that demographic?
I don't know it. No, I don't know it. I can guess that it's like 70% US based, something like that. And it's really challenging. Like, I think from a support perspective, you need folks in the time zone where your customers are, where they're having things they need taken care of. And that's the reason why we have one support person here in Europe and 2 in the US. But I think that, like, a lot of marketing, a lot of development doesn't need to be in the place where your customers are. And I think the one thing that remote does for you is it gives you this arbitrage opportunity to be able to hire really amazing people and pay them really, really, really well, but that be really cheap compared to what hiring a developer in San Francisco is. So like,
for sure. And we've got different in Europe. We've got different health situations, so that health insurance definitely doesn't come into it, or dental or whatever. So the costs to you can actually reward them with more money, because you don't have to pay all the kind of add-ons. So that's, as an American, you're American or Canadian? I don't know whether
American.
Okay, so I'm English, so forgive me for being an idiot, but it's difficult. I was speaking actually with a French Canadian lady last night at this Henley festival that I went to, and she didn't say out, and she said she didn't say out like normal to me normal Canadians do. She said that's because I'm from Quebec. We're French. Right. So it was a good one. Right, we're at the end of this, Craig. I cannot even tell you. You must be pretty relieved. There was no probably horrible answers, but or questions there. And Stephen and I have definitely, I can see by the smile on Stephen's face, we've definitely enjoyed interviewing you on behalf of WP-Tonic Podcast. And I'm not Jonathan Denwood. I'm Andrew Palmer. This has been Craig Hewitt from Castos. Craig, we'd always like our guests to have a little bit of self-promotional matter, but within you, it's even more important because you're our major sponsor, and we're grateful for that. So get on that and tell people where they can get in touch and stuff like that.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for having me. It's a really, really, really fun conversation. So thank you both for your time. It was cool to share everything, and hope it was helpful to the listeners. For us, you can find us at castos.com, CASTOS. And if folks want to reach out to me, I am the Craig Hewitt on Twitter. I don't tweet as often as I should, but DMs are open anytime. Love to chat.
Phenomenal. Thanks, mate. And Stephen, I don't know whether you do people know about you? Do we let you advertise on this kind of thing, or what? What's going on?
All depends how hospitable Jonathan's.
I'm hospitable. I'm the nicest guy I know. So you carry on.
No, you can find out more about us by going to hustlefish.com.
Yeah, Hustlefish. Yeah, that's great. And you can find more about this is at andrewpalmer.com, and this is andrewpalmer.com. So thanks a lot, Craig. Thanks, Stephen. I'm going to stop recording, and thanks for listening, people.